Hey guys, I want to talk with you about why we discuss true crime cases on social media. A lot of people with the case of Christopher Watts have said, "Oh, you're in love with Christopher Watts." Nobody on our channel has ever been a fan of Christopher Watts, ever. In fact, right from the start, I've said he belongs in prison for the rest of his life. But that's not the story they tell. The story they tell is, "Oh, she loves Christopher Watts." No, I don't. We're not the Chris Watts fan club at all. And nobody is bashing his wife. For Pete's sake, that is absurd. And nobody has ever bashed their children. Another channel creator actually said that in one of his videos full of lies. I want to explain to you what we're doing on our channel. We're discussing true crime cases. And I want to explain to you why. And why myself, I've been discussing true crime cases for over 10 years straight on social media. I want you to look at the case of Betty Broderick. Betty claims that she suffered mental abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, and I'm sure there are many others that I'm not thinking of right now off the top of my head. She went to her ex-husband's house not to kill him. She went there to kill herself in front of him. She couldn't take it anymore. They had been divorced, I think, for about a year at that point. They had been separated for about 4 years by that point. And during that entire time, she felt battered by him over and over again because of how he treated her. She said she wanted to go to his home and to plead with him one final time to just leave her, quote, the hell alone. And she said that if he refused to listen to her plea, then she was going to commit suicide right in front of him so he could suffer for the rest of his life, knowing what he caused her to do. Betty Broderick is still in prison. Her sentence was 32 years to life. She was convicted of second-degree murder. But it seems like at her parole hearing, they treated her as if she had been convicted of first-degree murder. And it looks like she'll be behind bars for the rest of her life. Look a little more closely at this case. It happened in 1989. The Violence Against Women and Children Act wasn't passed until 1994. The prosecutor in this case was one of the most highly respected prosecutors ever. And she was actually put on the bench a few years or maybe even sooner than that after the case of Betty Broderick. She's a judge. She's highly respected. She's highly intelligent, highly professional. But listen to this. During the trial, or maybe it was right after the trial had concluded, the prosecutor said that she knew that Betty Broderick wasn't a battered woman. And the reason she knew it was because she had money. That's one of the fallacies. That's one of the myths that people in our society held onto for a long time, specific to the issue of domestic violence. That if a family lived in the right neighborhood, then of course they weren't experiencing abuse. And then the case of Betty Broderick hit the news, right? Hit all the headlines and all the talk shows. And a few years later, Oprah Winfrey did a show featuring Betty Broderick from the prison, right? She went right to the prison and interviewed her. Even Oprah. I mean, think about that. Oprah is like the pioneer for women's rights, right? Even Oprah did not seem to really understand the issue of domestic violence at that time, which I think it was 1992. I'm just guessing. But again, it was before the Violence Against Women and Children Act was passed in 1994 for the first time. By discussing this case, by exposing the details of the case of Betty Broderick, a lot of people have been helped. A lot of women, specifically back in the 90s, looked at that case and said, oh my God. Oh my God. One of the tricks in an abusive family is that the people who are being abused don't realize it is abuse. But then when they watch maybe the movie that Meredith, what's her name, Baxter Burney or whatever, the movie she did on the Betty Broderick story, maybe they watched that movie and said, oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, that's how my husband treats me. Maybe by discussing the case of Betty Broderick, there were women at that time who were able to safely escape an abusive relationship. Maybe there were women who were able to learn from Betty Broderick's statements that yes, domestic violence can and does happen in the nicer neighborhoods too. This is just one example of why it's important for us to discuss true crime cases. Because if one person can learn, can see themselves, can identify the warning signs, can say, hey, wait a minute. If one person can learn from the discussion of any true crime case, then hallelujah. But if 100 people or 1,000 people or even 50,000 people can learn from discussing a true crime case, then that's a major hallelujah for sure. You know, the insults are just insane against any of us who are discussing the case of Christopher Watts. They're absolutely insane. They're slanderous, they're libelous, they're disgusting. And they really make no sense. Nobody is obsessed with the case of Christopher Watts. Nobody. Nobody is obsessed with female killers. Nobody is obsessed with any one case at all. Although I think there are a few people obsessed with the Darla Routier case, but whatever. It isn't the case itself. It isn't the people involved in the case. It's about the social norms. It's about the fact, I guess specific to the case of Christopher Watts, it's about the fact that everybody thought they were happy. It's about the fact that everybody thought that his wife was a stay-at-home mom. It's about the fact that there are people on social media being attacked for simply discussing the case. Did you know that I've been told by the attackers that I am, quote unquote, allowed to discuss any case I want, except the case of Christopher Watts? Isn't that interesting? They don't mind if I discuss Betty Broderick, but I'm not, quote unquote, allowed to discuss the case of Christopher Watts? Well, I'm here to ask you this. What makes that case so special? What makes that case off limits from our discussions? What makes that case any different from the rest?